You're listening to a production of the National Media Archive. To learn more or volunteer, go to nationalmediaarchive.com.
Nestled in the green embrace of the Cabinet Mountains, Libby, Montana looks like a picture-perfect town waterfalls, forests, and a close-knit community. But what if I told you that beneath this beauty lies one of America's deadliest environmental disasters? Between 1,990 and 1,999 thousands of Libby residents were unknowingly exposed to a lethal form of asbestos, leading to over 400 cases of asbestos-related disease and at least 700 excess deaths. That's nearly the entire population of the town. You may wonder, how could something so catastrophic go unnoticed for so long? Let's peel back the layers of history, greed, and denial that led to Libby's tragedy. Today, we're diving deep, from the town's indigenous roots to the rise of a mining empire and the hidden poison within its prosperity. By the end, you'll see how a community's fight for survival and justice became a cautionary tale for us all. Long before Libby became synonymous with disaster, it was the ancestral land of the Kootenai and other indigenous tribes. The first non-native presence were British fur traders in 1809, followed by gold and silver prospectors in the 1860s. But the real turning point came in 1889 when rich deposits of silver and lead were discovered, sparking a classic boomtown transformation. People flocked here for jobs and fortune. Now, imagine you're a miner in those days' new opportunities, bustling streets, but also a growing reliance on whatever the earth could offer. That dependency would soon have deadly consequences. Did anyone foresee the price the community would pay for this prosperity? History shows us that progress often comes at an unseen cost. Let's move to the mineral that would make and break Libby vermiculite. Vermiculite, a name you probably don't hear every day. This mineral expands when heated, turning into light, fireproof, worm-like strands. That's called exfoliation, and it made vermiculite a star in insulation, gardening, and even in plastics. Why is it so useful? Technical term 1. Thermal conductivity. It means vermiculite efficiently transfers heat, so it's great for insulation. Technical term 2. Chemical inertness. It doesn't react with other chemicals, making it safe for countless products. But here's the catch. Much of Libby's vermiculite was contaminated with amphibole asbestos. Imagine thinking you're harvesting gold, but you're actually digging up poison. Now you might be thinking, surely someone knew? And you'd be right, just not the people who needed to. Let me tell you how vermiculite's promise masked a growing peril for the people of Libby. By 1919, Edgar and Alley founded the Zonolite Company, mining and selling Libby's vermiculite nationwide. In 1963, chemical giant W.R. Grace took over, ramping up production to 200 tons a year. Zonolite became a household name, but at what cost? The process generated clouds of dust, much of it laced with toxic asbestos fibers. Technical term, particulate matter, tiny airborne particles. Another, open-pit mining, which exposes more earth and more risk. Imagine working in the mine, coming home every night with dust on your clothes, hugging your kids. No warning labels, no alarms, just another day on the job. Residents trusted the company. After all, the mine was Libby's lifeblood. But sometimes, what seems to sustain us is quietly killing us. Let's see how this invisible threat spread far beyond the mine's gates. So what is asbestos, really? It's a group of minerals made up of microscopic fibers. Imagine them like tiny, brittle needles. In Libby, the main type was amphibole asbestos, notorious for its sharp, lung-piercing structure. Here's a technical term: asbestosis, that scar tissue buildup in the lungs, making it harder and harder to breathe. Another one, mesothelioma, a rare aggressive cancer that strikes decades after exposure. Shockingly, it wasn't just miners. Up to half of Libby's asbestos victims had no direct link to the mine. Why? The dust didn't stay put. It drifted through neighborhoods, rode home on workers' clothes, settled on playgrounds. Imagine being a child, tumbling in piles of dust, never suspecting it was anything but harmless. That's the true horror, a threat you can't see, taste, or smell. And here's the cruel twist. The damage often takes 20, even 40 years to show itself. By then, it's far too late. Now, let's talk about responsibility. When W.R. Grace bought the mine in 1963, did they know the risks? Absolutely. Industry journals warned about asbestos as far back as the 1930s, and internal reports flagged dangerous air quality in Libby's facilities. Technical Term 1. Epidemiological studies research tracking disease patterns in groups. 2. Risk mitigation steps to reduce dangers. W.R. Grace ignored both, keeping reports secret and skipping recommended safety measures like dust masks. Now, you might say, weren't workers warned? Sadly, no. Many never saw those reports. Instead, executives focused on minimizing public scrutiny, not protecting lives. Let me tell you about Dr. Woodrow Nelson, a local physician who tried to sound the alarmingly to be dismissed by the company. This is where corporate negligence turns into a cover-up, setting the stage for tragedy on a massive scale. Dr. Nelson's story is both inspiring and infuriating. He saw patients with lung disease, ran his own tests, and wrote to W.R. Grace demanding further study and transparency. Technical term: morbidity rate, the frequency of disease in a population. Another: confounding variables, factors that can muddy research results. W.R. Grace manipulated their own studies by including supervisors less exposed to asbestos, lowering the apparent risk. Imagine being told your concerns are being handled only to learn executives were more worried about bad press than sick workers. Dr. Nelson's findings were buried, his results ignored. Now, some of you may be asking, could one voice have made a difference? History suggests yes, if only it had been heard. But the company's pattern was clear: delay, deflect, and deny. The truth wasn't just inconvenient, was dangerous to profits. By the 1980s, the mounting toll was impossible to ignore. Lawsuits began rolling in, but Libby workers faced legal roadblocks. Technical term: statute of limitations, a time limit on filing claims. Another: occupational disease law, which often favored companies over sick employees. W.R. Grace settled quietly, refusing to admit fault. They even funded studies trying to claim Libby's asbestos wasn't dangerous only to have the science backfire. You might be thinking, how could they get away with this? Simple: delay investigations, influence regulators, and, when all else failed, file for bankruptcy. In 2001, facing 129, 0 lawsuits, W.R. Grace declared Chapter 11, freezing legal action. Yet, even bankruptcy wasn't the end. The company set up billion-dollar trust funds to compensate victims, but for many, it was too little, far too late. Let's explore the government's response and the long-overdue push for cleanup. In 2000, the EPA finally stepped in, launching a massive investigation and cleanup operation. Technical term: environmental remediation, removing pollution to protect health. Another: Superfund Site A designation for the nation's worst toxic messes. Libby was declared a Superfund site, spurring decades of decontamination. Airborne asbestos levels dropped 0-fold after interventions. Think about that. From invisible clouds to almost undetectable. EPA workers tested over 80 properties, finding 600 needing cleanup, but the scars run deep, whole families devastated, and new cases still being diagnosed today. Now you might ask, is Libby finally safe? The answer: safer, but vigilance remains crucial. The latency of asbestos means new victims may still emerge for years. Still, Libby's ordeal has driven national awareness, and tougher regulation shard-won lessons paid for in pain. Libby's struggle is far from just local histories. It's a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked corporate power. Technical term: corporate liability, legal responsibility for harm caused. Another: regulatory oversight, the watchful eye meant to protect the public. For decades, profit trumped safety. Company executives denied, delayed, and deflected. It took relentless whistleblowers, dogged journalists, and courageous residents to drag the truth into the light. Let me tell you a story. One Libby resident called it mass murder. That may sound extreme, but when you consider the evidence, the cover-ups, the preventable deficits, hard to argue. But Libby also shows us the power of resilience. Today, the town is cleaner, stronger, and united by loss, but also by hope. As you breathe in your next lungful of fresh air, Remember Libby. It's a call to vigilance, to accountability, and to never let profit silence the truth.